The reading of Curtis Holloway's last will and testament occurred on a somber February morning in 1971 within the chambers of attorney Thomas Brennan, situated above the Farmers and Merchants Bank in Hawarden, Iowa. This particular corner of northwestern Iowa, within Sioux County, is distinguished by the mighty Big Sioux River forming a natural boundary with South Dakota. It is a region renowned for its fertile plains, ideal for cultivating corn and soybeans with the very best yields the Midwest has to offer. Curtis had passed away at the age of 68 after a brief struggle with lung cancer, leaving behind his 41-year-old son, Raymond. Raymond had worked alongside Curtis on the family farm for many years, fully anticipating an eventual inheritance of the entire agricultural enterprise. What he had not foreseen was the distinct and burdening manner in which his father had chosen to distribute his assets. Raymond was bequeathed the original 320 acres, entirely free of any encumbrances, along with all of Curtis's farm equipment. This collection included a 1949 John Deere Model A, a 1958 John Deere 62.0, a 1962 40 corn planter, a 1955 grain drill, 2 farm wagons, a worn-out bale loader, and a collection of discs, plows, and cultivators that varied in condition from functional to practically useless. The land itself was appraised at approximately $112,000, averaging around $350 per acre, a fair valuation for Sioux County in 1971. The machinery, if one were being exceedingly generous, might have fetched $8,000 at auction. Raymond's total inheritance amounted to roughly $120,000, representing full equity with no outstanding debt. Before delving further into Raymond's journey, it is essential to comprehend the significance of the 1949 John Deere Model A and the 1958 Model 62.0, as these details are central to his path. The Model A was initially introduced in 1934 and continued in production until 1952, holding the distinction of being John Deere's most popular row crop tractor of its era. By 1949, the Model A delivered approximately 38 horsepower at the belt, running on either gasoline or all fuel, equipped with a 4-speed transmission and a distinctive 2-cylinder engine that produced a characteristic sound cherished by old-timers. It weighed around 5,200 pounds and could effectively pull a 2-bottom plow in decent soil conditions. By 1971, a 1949 model was 22 years old, an antiquity by the standards of contemporary farming. However, these tractors were constructed with exceptional durability, akin to anvils, and were capable of operating virtually indefinitely with proper maintenance. The 62.0 generated approximately 43 horsepower, retaining the 2-cylinder design while incorporating live hydraulics and an improved electrical system. In 1971, it was 13 years old, outdated, yet fully operational. Contrast these with the modern machinery of the era, such as the International Harvester 1066, introduced in 1971, a turbocharged 6-cylinder diesel powerhouse producing 125 horsepower with a climate-controlled cab, power steering, and an 8-bottom plow capability, costing around $13,800. Raymond departed Thomas Brennan's office that February morning, stepping into a future that felt deeply frustrating. He harbored a profound sense of being shortchanged, believing his father had forced him to cling to the past with aging, paid-off equipment, while modern agricultural operations were sprinting toward the future. Over coffee at the diner across from the courthouse, he lamented his situation, unable to dispel a lingering bitterness. That evening, while conversing with his wife Margaret in their modest farmhouse, the same house where Curtis had raised him, Raymond made a resolute decision. He declared that he was not going to spend his entire life farming with junk just because his father was too frugal to upgrade. He reasoned that because he had full equity, he could leverage it to modernize. Margaret placed her trust in her husband's judgment. Within 2 months, Raymond secured a loan against his unencumbered land, borrowing $45,000 at an interest rate of 8.25% through the Farmers and Merchants Bank. He purchased a used 1968 John Deere 4020 for $11,000, a quality 6-row planter an improved bale loader, and upgraded grain handling machinery, while allocating the remaining funds toward operating expenses. He sold both the old Model A and the 62O at auction for a combined $3,200, a sum that felt like receiving mere pennies for historical relics. His total financial commitment added a debt service payment of approximately $435 per month on his loan. What Raymond did not comprehend at that moment was that he was on the cusp of an extraordinary economic cycle. The early 1970s marked a period of significant prosperity for American agriculture. Corn prices surged from $1 per bushel in 1970 to over $3 by 1974, while soybean prices reached over $6 per bushel. The Soviet grain deal of 1972 ignited a commodities boom that rendered farmers exceptionally wealthy on paper. Land values escalated dramatically, and Raymond achieved considerable financial success. His modern 4020 outperformed the older two-cylinder tractors with ease, allowing him to cultivate more acreage efficiently. However, this impressive production masked a fundamental shift in Raymond's cost structure. In addition to his monthly debt payments, his fuel expenses were higher because the 4020 consumed considerably more diesel. His maintenance costs rose due to the intricate hydraulic systems requiring specialized dealer service, and property taxes increased alongside land appraisals. During these boom years, prevailing agricultural wisdom, promoted by economists and academic institutions, proclaimed a permanent shift, asserting that global demand would sustain elevated prices indefinitely. Farmers were encouraged to expand, borrow, and leverage their land. Curtis Holloway, having navigated the Great Depression, had understood that market cycles invariably turn, structuring his initial bequest to protect Raymond from debt, but Raymond had taken on the leverage anyway. By 1976, the tide began to turn. Corn prices softened to $2.15 per bushel, and by 1980, they collapsed below $2, following the Soviet grain embargo. Simultaneously, interest rates skyrocketed, with the prime rate peaking at over 20% in 1981. Agricultural loans pushed toward 18 to 20%, and variable rate terms adjusted upward disastrously. Iowa farmland values collapsed, dropping below $600 per acre by 1985, leaving countless farmers owing far more than their land was worth. Essential input costs, fuel, fertilizer, seed, and chemicals escalated rapidly, catching farmers in a crushing vice of falling income and rising expenses. Across the country, thousands succumbed to foreclosure. Raymond's situation grew increasingly precarious. While his debt was lower than that of many expanding neighbors, his $435 monthly payments, underinflated interest rates, combined with high operational costs, threatened to erode his farm completely. Realizing the impending catastrophe, Raymond made a radical move in 1981 that ultimately saved his livelihood, though it demanded immense personal sacrifice. He attended an estate auction for a neighboring farmer who had fallen into financial ruin. There, Raymond purchased two older tractors for a combined $1,200, a 1951 John Deere Model A, virtually identical to the one his father had left him, and a 1959 John Deere 630. Raymond then sold his modern 4020 tractor for $6,800 and applied every cent of the proceeds directly toward reducing his loan principal. He abruptly reverted to his father's farming methods, utilizing older, fully depreciated equipment with minimal maintenance demands and lower fuel consumption. His neighbors thought he had lost his mind, farming in 1981 with machinery from the Korean War era, while everyone else tried to remain technologically current. Yet Raymond had calculated the cold economic realities. His monthly debt service dropped below $300, his fuel expenses plummeted by 60%, and he eliminated dealer repair fees by performing all maintenance himself, using basic wrenches and sheer willpower. At low commodity prices, this low-cost structure enabled Raymond to endure. Thousands of farms failed between 1980 and 1985, tearing apart the social fabric of rural communities. But Raymond survived. He finally grasped the profound wisdom embedded in his father's original legacy. Equity and low operational costs were the ultimate shields against economic collapse. Curtis had attempted to give him a zero-debt foundation, and though Raymond had briefly strayed by leveraging his land, he corrected course before it was too late. By 1985, as the worst of the crisis subsided, Raymond was still actively farming his original 320 acres. Through frugal living and aggressive principal payments, his loan was entirely extinguished. He was operating completely debt-free on land he owned outright, running machinery older than some of his grandchildren. Decades passed, and Raymond watched the enduring power of that financial philosophy shape his family's multi-generational stability. His son, Curtis Jr., eventually took over the operation and expanded it to 960 acres by strategically purchasing adjacent land during the crisis years when prices hit rock bottom. The expanded farm was modernized carefully, keeping debt strictly manageable, while the original 320 acres remained the unencumbered foundation of the business. Today, Raymond is 94 years old, still residing in the same farmhouse where he was raised. The 1951 John Deere Model A he bought in 1981 remains safely housed in the machine shed, meticulously maintained, occasionally brought out for parades where old-timers gather to reminisce. The core lesson of Raymond's life, that lower debt and low-cost structures outweigh speed, modern equipment, and sheer scale when hardship strikes, became a permanent family doctrine, passed down even to his grandchildren. Seated on his porch overlooking the fields cleared generations ago, Raymond fully comprehends his late father's vision. The ultimate objective in farming, or any endeavor, is simply the ability to endure after the storm subsides, built on the timeless principle, own what you farm before you farm what you owe.